Yeah, I had to restart this as it is. Um, what's going on, everyone? Hope you all are doing well. We're going to give it a couple of minutes, then we're going to get started into this. We're going to talk about this. We're going to go ahead and break these things down as it is. It's really amazing when you look at it, when you pull everything together. I didn't just come to this conclusion on my own about Jesus returning, by the way. Was not my conclusion. Matter of fact, if I had a conclusion before all this, I wouldn't have wanted him to return by this way. But through the 66 books of the canon of the Bible, Genesis to Revelation, it's the only way it works. Okay? Because the thing is this, is that the language that is being used for the Old Testament is the language that's being used in the book of Revelation. And if you can't come to that fact that in the book of Revelation there's Old Testament imagery being used, then you're never going to be able to understand how Jesus would have returned based on Old Testament scripture and the book of Revelation as it is. So this is very important, but when we pull everything together, we start to see something very, very interesting. It's not eisegesis. Matter of fact, if you try to pull it out of the time frame of 70 AD, the first century church, then you're using eisegesis with this. So we have to start coming to this understanding that preterism is not a bad thing. It's been kicked on, beat down for God knows how long, and people have been said that they were heretics and stuff, and they're trying to use scripture to justify these things, to say that they're a heretic, based on like 2 Timothy, when it says Hymenaeus and Philetus said that the resurrection already came and they are heretics. Well, the problem with that is this. If that was written by Paul, that would show that Paul, we know based historically that Paul died before the 70 AD siege. So Paul would have had to write 2 Timothy or even 1 Timothy before 70 AD, which would not work whatsoever based on that idea, that fact. And matter of fact, the resurrection would end up occurring according to Daniel chapter 12, along with the trouble of Jacob, which would be Israel. Not the world, Jacob. Jacob is Israel. Therefore, if the trouble of Jacob would come, Jacob's trouble, after Jacob's trouble, the resurrection would occur. Okay? This is important to understand because after that tribulation period, after the 4,000 years of bloodshed that would be placed upon Jerusalem, the Pharisees, the religious leaders in that day, according to Matthew chapter 23, like Jesus said to them, he said, the bloodshed from Abel to Zechariah is going to be on you guys. You cannot try to pull that into our generation. Why? Because he said from Abel to Zechariah, which would have been leading up to 4,000 years of bloodshed, which would have stopped at Zechariah, which would have actually been within that day. So Jesus was saying that the bloodshed was coming upon that generation and that day because it stopped with the bloodshed of Zechariah. So when we pull it all together, we look at it all, the trouble of Jacob would occur. Then once Jacob's trouble would occur, the resurrection would occur. The resurrection would occur with the destruction of the temple, the throwing down of the altar of the chalkstones when they were beaten in sunder, according to Isaiah chapter 27. And then Leviathan would end up being destroyed. Okay? So with that, what we are now in is something very interesting. Based on Scripture, the 66 canon of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, we know that Jesus would have to return within that time frame, okay? Because he would occur and he would return in the clouds of judgment. He told Caiaphas that you shall see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of judgment. Mark 14:62. He told his disciples that you guys will not be able to get through Israel until the Son of Man comes. Matthew 10:23. He told his disciples that there are some of you that are standing here that shall not taste death until the Son of Man comes. Matthew chapter 16, verse 27 and 28. Then we can get into the letters of James and Peter. James chapter 5, verse 8, when the Lord was coming nigh, when the Lord's coming was drawing nigh. In 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 7, they were living in the last days. Paul telling you they were living in the last days. The book of Revelation saying that the time is short. Daniel told to seal the book up until the end times, and then in the times When John wrote Revelation, at the very end of it, it says, keep the book open because the time is short. So, what is this? What we begin to see is this cohesion within the scriptures that shows that Jesus Christ had to return within that day, because the tribulation period, the great tribulation, 4,000 years of bloodshed from Abel to Zechariah, would be on that one generation, which would have been Mystery Babylon, because it's where the blood of the prophets and the saints were slain, which would have been from Abel to Zechariah and all those who were upon the earth. If you read Matthew chapter 23, that's exactly what it says. So in that regard, if that is the case, you can't deny the fact that Matthew chapter 23 cannot be disconnected from Matthew 24 or Matthew 25 for that matter. Because with those three chapters connected together, you begin to see who Mystery Babylon is. And then Mystery Babylon, it says this is going to be the place where Satan is destroyed. Well, guess what the beginning of Revelation says? It says that there are those who call themselves Jews, but they are not Jews. They are a part of the synagogue of Satan. Okay? So they are a part of the synagogue of Satan. It's not a church. It's not a mosque. It's not the Muslims. It's not the Christians. It's not the Roman papacy. It's a synagogue. And what's a synagogue? It's Jewish. Because the synagogue of Satan is where Mystery Babylon would be. And if Mystery Babylon is where the synagogue of Satan was, then it would be the destruction of something like Old Covenant Jerusalem. All right, guys, so just with that little briefing right there, bringing a couple of things together, I pray that that helps you a little bit, that this can show you some of the truth as it is. I'm going to go ahead and bring Chris on here, and we're going to be talking. Okay. What's going on, Chris?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good, brother. How about yourself? Yeah, guys. So Chris, Reconstructing Christianity. Um, it really felt like I was being drawn to Chris. The reason why, he's a very knowledgeable man. He knows the scriptures. He knows the struggle of becoming a preterist. He knows that it was tough to even go down this rabbit hole, and even the idea of who Satan really is, and how the Old Covenant God, the God that made a covenant with Moses, was actually not the true deity. And there's a lot to this, but tonight we're going to be talking. Everyone, if you haven't been on this channel yet, this is Chris from Reconstructing Christianity. So, Chris, if you want to go ahead and talk,
Yeah,
brother.
no, when it comes to at least the preterist viewpoint of the Bible, I mean, we have a lot going on there that we negated. We didn't take into account for many generations of teaching. Cultural aspects of who these people were, what they actually believed, how they spoke on a day-to-day basis. So when you put that into consideration, you get a much different story going on in the New Testament and in the Book of Revelation. One of perseverance and triumph among those people in that very time period.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, brother. Yeah, you see, this is the beauty of it, you guys. Preterism is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing because this shows that the judgment was meant for Jerusalem. It's not meant for us. You see, the thing is that if Christianity would wake up and stop living in a doom and gloom mentality, a fearful mentality, like, oh, the mark of the beast is coming and different. No, it was meant for one generation. And there's no speculation to what the mark of the beast is. It's told right there in the Old Covenant. Okay? No speculation whatsoever. So it's amazing. It really is.
Well, you get this. Jerusalem was never restored to a nation, as Gabriel said it would before Christ's return. You get this idea that Israel was not becoming a nation back then. Pentecost, the two houses become one under one king, Christ. This is this is them becoming a sovereign nation unto themselves under the king of Christhood. But there's more to the explanation than that. That's just like a brief piece of the puzzle. But it all took place in the first century. There's nothing outside of this text that suggests in any way a future generation.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Guys, you can't take away the fact that Paul even says in 1 Corinthians 7 that, guys, Corinthians, it's better that you guys don't marry because the time is short. Okay. You can't take away the fact that Paul says that the gospel was preached to every creature under heaven. You can't take it. Maybe you don't like Paul. Let's go to James. James even says that the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. Peter said it. It's all over the scriptures. There's no denying it. Put yourself in a first century mentality and think about what they were going through in that day. Okay?
Right, right. And of course, the standards that come up in the comment section, like this isn't the new earth. Well, it's not talking about an actual physical planet. The new earth is you. The new heaven is you. This is the new temple of God, the bodily temple of Christ.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about it. We think of the new heavens and the new earth as this physical thing, but Jesus even said, "My kingdom is not of this world." So if his kingdom isn't of this world, wouldn't it make sense that if on the earth, the old earth, there was a temple, in the new earth, we would be the temple because Jesus even said that. Paul made it clear, the disciples made it clear that we are the temple of God where the Holy Spirit dwells. So it's not something that you can see with your physical eyes. It's a kingdom that's within. And this is the beauty of it because we have actual proof and evidence that Jerusalem was destroyed and there was a great war that ended up occurring between 66 to 70 AD. And this is very important. And if we don't understand it, we'll never get to the bottom of this. So.
Right, right. It's understanding the cultural context of everything and how they were viewing it, what it truly meant to them. It's you can always say, well, this is how it applies to us now, but how did it originally apply? And who did it apply to originally? It most definitely wasn't us. It applied to them. The imagery alone applies to them. The fact that it brings up imagery that they would have recognized, that was being pulled from the Torah itself for that purpose.
You see, even there's a message right here by Coach Mason. So all living creatures in the sea died. Mark issue, Christ reigned for 1,000 years, Satan locked away. Chris, I'm gonna let you handle this one, man. I'm gonna let you.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're dealing with wormwood at one aspect of this. The animals of the sea dying. Well, this is metaphorical. This is apocalyptic language, and he is talking about the waterways around Israel, and in the time period, as they were throwing bloated dead bodies, the Roman Empire, into the rivers. Even the Sea of Galilee, they said, was so red, tainted with the blood, that yes, it had poisoned the waters. It was killing the fish in the waters around them. So 1/3 of the marine life in the waters around Israel were killed. This happened. 1/3 of the land was burned and destroyed by the Roman Empire as they started with Damascus, destroying it, burning it to the ground, sweeping their way in, and then realizing, oh, wait, these guys are already busy killing themselves because Israel was embroiled in a civil war. So they sweep up around and head north and head up into the areas where they can come from, into the down into the western region from over the top of the Mount of Olives into Jerusalem. Meanwhile, they're letting Israel destroy itself for the most part. And then they come in, they destroy Israel, and then almost as if the cleanup crew was sent out and dispatched, they swept backwards and destroyed the rest of Israel. So
yeah. You see, guys, you're thinking of this as an understanding of the world as in the cosmos, but what you don't understand is that when this Greek was written, it was the word Gaia. that's being used. Look in the book of Revelation. It's never the word cosmos that's being used. It's the word Gaia. It's talking about the inhabited land. Okay? It's talking about a certain area, and the known world of that time would be destroyed. This is why Paul actually went furthest out to the land of Tarshish, which would have been in Rome, which actually would have stopped with nation in the table of nations according to Genesis chapter 11. That was his evangelization mission, to get all the way to Rome based on the table of nations, based on Genesis 11.
Right.
Genesis 10.
Right. Well, they take the aspect of the gospel having to be preached to every creature. Well, this means every Jew. This is what they're not getting. The gospel had to be preached to every Jew, and Paul says that took place. Every Jew in their known world had heard the gospel message of Jesus Christ.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Colossians 1:23, Romans 10:18, Romans chapter 1, Romans 16. It literally says in Romans 16 that Satan was getting ready to be crushed under the Romans' feet at that point in time, very shortly. It was not talking about something 2,000 years out in the future. It was talking about in that day. Read Luke 21. That's all you need to understand that the revelation would occur in that time, because the desolation that was drawing nigh was the Romans surrounding Jerusalem to destroy them. And in that regard, Luke 21 verse 22 says that these are the days of vengeance, when all things that are written shall be fulfilled. That's all there is to it. Okay?
Right. And see, that's where they're not taking into consideration. It says all things written. This would include the book of Revelation. It is written, and therefore it would have been fulfilled during this time period. And I know that a lot of people want to go, well, Revelation wasn't even written, but this is actually a stupid argument. It falls off at the fact that John alludes to the temple still standing. He includes himself in the text. There's many things that he mentions within the text that involve specifics. The seven churches of Asia, seven angels of the seven churches, which would be the seven leaders over the seven churches of Asia. So you have these images being brought up, and though they're obscure and they're sort of mysterious, they're by no means meant to bring in this idea of fear that we encapsulate today.
Right, exactly. And guys, this is the beauty of it. When you here's the thing. Out of the 404 verses in Revelation, mark my words when I say this, you can go look at this. Out of the 404 verses in Revelation, 278 of them are allusions back to the Old Testament imagery. Stop trying to think that it's literally going to happen this way, that's going to destroy the entire world. It's apocalyptic language that was used for the times of the Old Covenant Jerusalem people. And this is exactly what it is in the book of Revelation. It's the only thing that makes sense when you put it all together. Stop being hypocritical. Put it in its proper context.
And it's the same with a lot of the tenets, like baptism and all of these things. This was because they were still held to the law. They were still under this old covenant system. And unless they were abiding within this covenant system, they were still outside of the law. This is how it goes down. So they're having to keep to these certain tenets. This is why Paul is so adamant about purity and these things, is because he's trying to keep the boat from rocking as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. He's trying to keep the peace at large, and he was caught in the middle of this. He died right before the besieging of Jerusalem, as it was.
Approximately the year or at the beginning of the year before the actual final siege pushed through, or the end of the previous year, 65 to 66. Him and Peter, within a week of each other, were executed. So
yeah. Guys, it's very I know people will sit there and say, "Oh, you're an idiot for believing that this could be metaphorical and allegorical language." Well, guess what? You need to really go back and study the Old Testament, Because if you think that's literal, when there was a Babylonian captivity and Assyrian captivity, the temples were destroyed and how they believed that their entire earth was being destroyed, then you don't understand the text. And you can't go from chapter 1 to chapter 14. You have to read what's in between, or else you're not going to understand what's really going on. And this is the biggest crux to the entire matter of Jesus returning in 70 AD. But Chris, what I wanted to talk about with you tonight was about, and we were talking about this on the phone the other night, and I thought this was really good. The rejection of Jesus and why it had to happen this way. Why
Christ
did it to occur? So
Christ was definitely on a mission, and the mission was to take this salvation from sin, this reconciliation of mankind to the world, and not just to the Jewish people. It's evident that if they would have accepted Christ, they would have received all of these gifts right there and then. They would have received their physical kingdom. He would have cast Rome from their midst. Everything would have went down exactly the way the Jews imagined it should happen. This is why you have even John the Baptist at one point questioning whether or not Christ is actually the Messiah. It's going to happen. It should happen, right? This is where John is at. So
right.
you have this. They're all under the impression that this is a David-like king. He's going to come in and he's going to physically rule and take over. And Christ tells his own disciples that he speaks in parables, lest these wicked men understand and repent. He doesn't want Israel to repent. He wants them to reject him, because in this manner he can take it now to the whole world. This forgiveness of sin, this reconciliation back to God.
Right, exactly. And this is the main thing with this. This is why when Jesus even went to the Jews and he told them about how the God that they were worshiping was not the Father, in other words. And this one that they were worshiping wanted animal sacrifice. He wanted physical things, in other words. And we know basically
you have the blood atonement, and this blood atonement, Josh, look at this blood atonement. It covers for the year coming up, not the previous year. It's not covering the sins that they've committed over the last year, but it's covering the sins to come. Right? So Christ is coming in. He's this final sacrifice to end the sacrificial law, to void the law entirely, because without sacrifice, the law is nothing. Sacrifice is the entirety of the law. And in this aspect, he is now not just covering the future sins for a year, but for all eternity in one fell swoop on the cross.
Wow, yeah. Absolutely. The atonement for all sin for all the world. From the foundations of the world, for every single man, woman, and child on the face of this earth, because through Adam, we had sin. We did not choose it. It was something that we could not choose to be put into sin. That happened by our great grandfather, or whatever you want to call him. But through Jesus Christ, he has saved the entire world through one atonement. And it's not by choice, it's just by what it is. Because what happened is in the days of first century Jerusalem, they had a choice to make. But the choice was based on the judgment that was coming and the reconciliation of all mankind after the judgment. Book of Acts says that. And after the temple was destroyed, that was the reconciliation for sins. You see, it was up on the cross, but the ultimate fulfillment was in the destruction of the old covenant. So,
right, the end of it comes as judgment is finally cast on unbelieving Israel for their transgressions against the prophets and against the saints and against God. It all culminates at that very moment when that temple falls, bringing an end to this religious system of Judaism and to religious systems in general, if you listen to the words of Christ.
Right. Right. Exactly. And that's very important to understand because this is the beauty of preterism. This is the beauty. And guys, we didn't just make all this up. Like Chris, you can ask Chris how long he's been studying, how hard it was for him to come to the idea of preterism. And just listen to this.
Yeah, it was years of study, actually. It's been nearly 20 years of diehard study. And as far as coming to preterism, that was the most difficult journey of all because to accept that everything you ever believed, you've ever been taught is wrong is a difficult thing. I mean,
Oh
that's
God,
difficult for anybody to come to a conclusion where you sit back and you say, okay, I'm wrong. All of this is already done. This is over. This is fulfilled. I've been teaching a false concept of what these verses say. It's a
yeah.
difficult thing to come to.
Well, I grew up in the Pentecostal church, and the pastor that my dad sat under, all I ever heard about was the book of Revelation. Not the book of Matthew, not the book of John, not any of those, just the book of Revelation. And in it, he had a 38 tape series on the book of Revelation. And it was based on the pre-tribulational rapture. And it was based on all these things. So that was ingrained into me from a small child. Also, the concept of hell, the concept of all these things. But when I really stepped back and I studied, about 4 years into my study, after understanding about the pre-tribulation rapture, dispensational theology, John Nelson Darby, I was like, wait a minute, there's something more to this. I don't know what it is quite yet, but I know there's something more. And Jesus is using spiritual terminology to justify things. And when I started looking at it, it was about 4 years in. I read that book by James Stewart Russell called The Parousia of Jesus Christ. And after I read it, like halfway through, I slammed it shut. I was like, I can't do this. There ain't no way this is true. They're using too many allegories, too many metaphors, too much here. But then another 2 years later, I went back to it and I read it all. And I was like, oh my God, I'm immature in my thinking. I was immature and I wasn't ready for that meat at that time. And there may be some of you that aren't ready for it at this time, and that's okay. But this does not just as a means of basically saying, oh, yeah, I'm a preterist now. No, you have to go through the persecution. You have to go through all the deception, all the brainwashing that you went through in order to break free from it. So there is a lot to this, whether you believe it or not. And it's taken us a while to break away from it as well. So,
One of the things is learning that this is how they actually spoke, that they actually spoke in these idiomatic ways, that this was a commonality of day to day language. Once you figure that out, you realize that it's not too much metaphor and it's not too much allegory because this was a commonality of their regular speech.
yeah, yeah, well, yeah, and that's the thing about it. It's almost like I've read the Old Testament a couple of times, but I didn't think of it in those regards. But if you look at all of the judgment language on Jerusalem, it's very poetic, overemphasizing language that's being talked to them about with the Babylonian captivity, with Nebuchadnezzar, with the Assyrians, with Cyrus. And these are overwhelming, it's like poetry that's being used to
Right.
describe
Right.
things.
Well, that is the thing. It is a form of Hebraic poetry. Uh, all of the prophetic language written in the Bible, all apocalyptic language that comes later on down towards the New Testament era, this is all a form of poetry. And that's why I tell people all the time they've got to quit thinking about John the prophet or John the apostle, John the disciple, and think of John the poet because he's a scribe and a poet. This is something this is well known that he is also a poet. So he's using these skills, these linguistic skills, and apparently massive linguistic skills because how he put the book of Revelation together without having some sort of word processor, I will never understand because everything lines up too perfectly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And That's the beauty of it. I mean, some people may not accept it, but this is the language that they're actually using. I remember I did a series on YouTube. It was called the Geoengineered Revelation Prophecies and the Controversy of Zion. And I was showing how the prophecy came to pass and how they're going to try to make it look like it's coming to pass. And how they're going to use this means. But if you look at everything that they're trying to do right now, it's all through a means of technology. They can all
Oh
create
well,
it man-made
well, it's
in the
only through
field.
it's a mock-up. Yeah, it's a mock-up of what's going on. It's a mock-up of what took place in the first century, but done differently. And they can still have kinks thrown in there, like the recent uprising where they were about to take the Russian capital until they reached their little agreement. This was definitely a kink in their plan of how to pull all of this off. Because the real guys, if you look at it, is to go back to the old standard, two opposing factions. Uh,
Yes.
because you'll never get North Korea, Russia, China, these to join a singular world government. They will form their own faction, and of course, then everything else will fall in place under the UN. So,
Yeah, yeah, and this is the thing about it. Even like people will sit there and say, "Oh yeah, what about the locusts that are coming out of the pit in Revelation 9?" Well, if you go back to the Old Testament, the locusts were actually used as a metaphor for Nebuchadnezzar's army in the Babylonian captivity.
right,
So wouldn't it make
right.
sense that it's being used as a metaphor for the Roman army in the book of
Which
Revelation?
is precisely the point. These locusts come out of the ground, devouring everything in their path. This is the point of it all. The Roman Empire devouring everything in front of it, and they did just that. They ravaged what you would call the Israel landscape. It was demolished by the time it was through. They made it point to go after every single remaining Jewish outpost that existed.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think it was their sieging was for 5 months, which would have been the time frame, according to Revelation, of the 150 days that they would siege this place, Jerusalem. And in that, they actually besieged Jerusalem for 5 months, as in from May to September, the exact same months that a locust comes out from May to September for those 5 months. So there was an allegorical and a metaphorical language that was being used for these locusts, just like Nebuchadnezzar's army in the Old Testament. And what will end up happening is this same language was being used for that time frame because there was a 5 month sieging on their place, and it was called the scorched earth policy. The scorched earth policy. They actually used the trees around them to actually create to break barriers of the walls of Jerusalem, and they actually had a weapon called the scorpion. It was literally called the scorpion, and it was like a fine needle, and when it penetrated someone, it tortured them pretty much. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. It would puncture main organs and arteries, but it would cause internal bleeding and massive internal rupture. It would take somebody literally days to die from that wound.
from that, yeah, yeah, exactly, and That's that's interesting because even when the hailstones, it talks about the hailstones. The hailstones, I think it's 150-pound hailstones. Well, guys, guess what?
Right,
Chris, you already know what this is. So
right, right. Yeah, it's the boulders from the catapults, the small inline rock boulders they would fire from the smaller uh artillery catapults that they would line in the front.
yeah, guys, I truly challenge you to do a really deep dive into preterism and really, really, really study it. Okay. Now, mind you, you have to remember this.
Yeah, down here, beloved, I just want to answer you. Domitian exiled John, not Nero. There is no evidence to prove that John was exiled by Domitian, none whatsoever. However, it is more clear that he would have had to have been exiled under Nero. Again, he alludes to the temple standing. He's told to measure the temple and to leave out the courtyard. The fact that he has to measure the temple is a clear indication that it's still standing. What you're going off of is a small 4-paragraph excerpt in the third book of heresy written by Irenaeus, who had an 8th grade education and thought Jesus was crucified at the age of 50.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what's crazy about it all. Because when we even look at these early church fathers, it seems like man puts more trust in these early church fathers. They put more faith in the church fathers to try to sit there and say that Revelation was written after 70. Don't you think that they have an agenda to that, you guys? Think about that, okay? If let's just say this, okay? Let's say that these early church fathers did say that the revelation was after 70 AD, but all the internal evidence of the Bible, the 66 books, points to a pre-70 AD coming of Christ and the revelation happening within that time frame. Don't you kind of think that's interesting that the early church fathers would say that it was written after 70 AD? Don't you think that maybe there's an agenda behind it? Especially with what Chris just said, saying Irenaeus had an 8th grade reading level or an 8th grade education as it was. And yet he sits there and puts something he's so sure about in the book that he wrote that in actual reality, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever when it comes to the internal evidence of when Revelation was actually written. Just think about that, okay? Stop trusting in man and start looking at the internal source of what the Bible actually tells you, okay? Please, just stop looking at man. Start looking at what the Bible has to say, okay?
Yeah, putting Revelation in its proper perspective starts with learning the actual history and culture of the people and the time period. If there is no way that there is no clear indication that John is writing to these people. I mean, he addresses the 7 churches in Asia specifically, but the entire futurist doctrine literally falls apart at the very opening statement of the book of Revelation when he says these things must is the key word, soon take place. Why must they soon take place? Because the time is near, so they have to take place soon. There's no getting around the fact that they have to happen soon. And the word used there is in veritas, means right away. So these things must happen right away. There's no getting around. They have to happen right away. And why must they happen right away? Because the time is near. So he tells you not only that they have to happen right away, but that the time is near. That's why they have to happen right away. I mean,
Yeah. It can't get any more clear, you guys. It really can't. It was Revelation is written in a code even in which it was written that way because John couldn't come straight out and tell the people who the Antichrist was. What was really going on because he could get in trouble for it. So he had to write it in a code, a parabolic, metaphorical language that the Jews would understand because they knew the Old Testament best. Okay?
right. He knew that if he wrote it using this imagery, using these symbols, that they would go to the Old Testament scripture and they would come away with an understanding of where he was going with it and what he was meaning by it. Like I tell people all the time, it is an insult to the early church fathers, the ones of the first century, to say they received this letter from John, read it, and were completely baffled by the words inside the pages. It's an insult. You're saying they were stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's the problem here, you guys. The quicker we realize this, the quicker we wake up to it. And we can use scripture. We can go I really advise any of you if like you're sitting here saying that there ain't no way Jesus returned, there ain't no way that happened. Go read the Old Testament prophets. Go read the language that they use like in books like Isaiah 13, Isaiah 24 to 29. Read this imagery that they're using and then go look at the New Testament and see how Paul and Jesus are using this exact same language within their writings. Like 1 Corinthians 15, Paul got that language from Isaiah 25. Go to Romans chapter 11. See how Paul used that language about how all Israel would be saved from Isaiah 27 when Leviathan would be destroyed and the altar of the chalk stones would be thrown down, which was clearly talking about the destruction of the temple, because there's no way to get around that. It's language that's being used in this sense. But Chris, go ahead and say your piece with preterism, man, and let's talk about the rejection of Christ. Let's get into that a little bit.
Okay. Well, as I was saying, when it comes to the rejection of Christ, that was something that was necessary for the world. Christ is trying to take this gift that was originally meant for the Jews and give it to the world. This is, of course, reconciling man back to God. The whole premise is that if he allows them to accept him, this is why he speaks in parables. This is why he speaks in ways that they're not going to quite grasp what he is saying. He wants them to not understand. But we see that the Pharisees do understand. The Pharisees understand all too well. That's why they're terrified of what he's saying. And that's because they held a more spiritual view of the scriptures than the other parts of Judaism. And because of that, they were able to see what Christ was saying, and it terrified them.
Yeah, it freaked them out, you guys, because they knew. Even when Nicodemus came to Jesus, or Jesus came to Nicodemus, he says in John 3, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher that has come from God. He said that. We know that you're a teacher that has come from God. The Pharisees said this. They knew exactly what they were doing, okay? Now, but before we go on, there's a gentleman in here. He said something about the Bible is evil. The God of it has killed more than Satan, and that's according to your book. Well, here's the problem here. Chris and I, we are what you would call more Gnostic in our understanding of the scriptures, because we don't believe that guy that killed all those people in the Old Testament is the good guy. We actually believe that there's something fishy going on, especially with Yahweh having 2 million deaths attributed to him and Satan only having 10. So, actually, I think it's First Chronicles chapter 21 and 2 Samuel chapter 24 tells you that Yahweh is Satan. So, when you look at this and you bring it all together, you start to see that Jesus was speaking about a God that the Jews did not know. So in that regard, they had no awareness of him. But when Jesus came, he made him revealed. And when he made him revealed, he revealed their sin to them. So,
yeah, Christ is the true introduction of God to man. He's, hi, here I am. You never knew me, but this is who I truly am. This is why he is the expressed nature of the Father. He's the true nature of God coming through. This is why he's correcting the laws of Moses. He's going against the laws of Moses, because the laws of Moses are exactly that. They're the laws of Moses, not of God.
Yeah. The Sermon on the Mount. He says, "You have heard it said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, but I say unto you." That's from Exodus chapter 21. And there was a guy in here the other day. You remember what he said? He said, "Oh, it's because they heard it. The word says heard. That wasn't talking about Moses." I was like, are you kidding me right now? I don't know if you remember that guy, but it was when we had the 9 people in this chat, and he said something about that, about the Sermon on the Mount. But it's very clear that Christ is actually coming against this old covenant law. So
yeah, Willie Bird, Jesus is not Yahweh. I'm sorry to break this down to you, Willie Bird, but Jesus is not Yahweh. Jesus is El Elyon, God Most High. Yahweh is a pagan desert god, a god of sacrifice and blood, a deity of metallurgy, fire and smoke. This is all very easily researched. It's very easily researched. There's no barrier that stops this from being something that can be found within 20 minutes of a decent search on Google.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Deuteronomy 32, 8 and 9, guys. It says that the Most High gave an inheritance to all the angels of God, and Yahweh's inheritance was Jacob. Well, in order to obtain an inheritance, you cannot be a father, okay?
Yeah, in the Dead Sea Scrolls it says El. It says El separated the land among the sons of man, and Yahweh's portion was Jacob.
Yeah.
And it said it was the lot of his inheritance was his people, meaning he received nothing else except for this inheritance of this people.
Yeah, yeah, and that's, guys, the deeper we go down this rabbit hole, the more we start to realize that mainstream Christianity, what it teaches, even on the top of things with futurism. One thing that I learned that was, if futurism is wrong, and we're being lied to about this, and the Bible tells us this, and preterism is true, and Jesus did return in 70 AD, what more have we been lied to about? And this gets deeper into different levels, however deep you want to go. So,
See, Josh, and for me, the problem isn't where the lie started; it's where the lie ends. We have to find a point where we draw the line on the lie and say, okay, we know that this has been uh, propagated, that it's a creation, this futurist idea of the Bible. But where does it end? Because if we can continue to perpetuate the lie of the futurist return of Christ, or we can begin to perpetuate the truth of the New Jerusalem of Christ, which was his people, those who followed him, those who believed his words, those who trusted in him, and the fact that this was supposed to be a light unto the world, that it was meant to do much more than it has accomplished. And I think that's really where it breaks, is where do we draw an end to the lie and become the truth that was meant?
yeah, absolutely. And, Chris, it takes bravery, it takes courage to step out of the religious dogma. And one thing I can tell you is this much, is that I've never been more persecuted than not only the idea of preterism, but also the idea of Yahweh being Satan. I've never been
Oh,
persecuted more.
well, Josh, that one right there, the idea of Yahweh being Satan. Well, let's take the idea of Satan though. Here's the bigger issue, is this idea of how we view this battle between these two deities going on in the Bible. I mean, this is a battle that is told in the very universe itself. You have uh, energy versus dark energy, matter versus dark matter, light and dark, this cosmic fight, this opposition, these two cosmic forces pushing against each other for all eternity. To say that there is no balance would be a lie, but to say that you can bring true balance is also a lie. It becomes a fallacy in itself. There can be no balance, or the ballet stops, the beauty ends, the mystery's over.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this is, guys, when we look at it, especially with Yahweh being Satan, our idea. The reason why we say this and the reason why this idea stems is because if you look at modern day Christianity today, they justify killing. They justify different things going on, murder, warfare, all these things, because they're justifying something that has to do with what they would say is their God from the Old Testament, and they're using those characteristics to justify even the means of what the New Testament says as well.
This has always been the case. We always have used the Old Testament to justify things like war and violence. The Old Testament was used to justify the Crusades. The Old Testament was used to justify many things. Uh, we take an aspect of this dualistic nature to God and say, well, it's okay in certain aspects. When Christ says, no, this isn't the case. It's never okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's never
Yeah.
been okay for this. And would you even say, because the thing about it is that when we look at this idea and what it stems from, and just this concept of us being in alignment with this old covenant God that we believe is the true God, it also is the outcome of what has happened in our world today as well, because we justify these actions. We justify the things that are happening today. When in actual reality, if we got away from the lie that Jesus did return in 70 AD, that Jesus wants us to be the light of the world, that guys, we're not knocking the fact about Jesus. Matter of fact, we're reinforcing it, telling you that Jesus completed his mission. We're just trying to get you away from the norms of thinking and swim against the current. Because
Right. Well, see, that's what they don't get, Josh. What they don't get is they'll tell you you're anti-Christ when preterism is definitely for Christ. It not only says that Christ is real, Christ existed, he walked on the face of the earth, he performed the miracles, he died, he rose from the grave, but then he accomplished everything else he set out to do, and it's verifiable.
yeah, exactly. And that's the beauty of this. If more people woke up, if they started actually studying their Bibles, if they stopped getting into arguments. I mean, my God, the other day, what live was it I was on? Oh, it was Eddie's. It was Eddie's live. There was a guy in there, and he studied maybe about a year. It's like, dude, you need to stop coming into these lives and go study more, because the things that you're going to teach, it's going to damage people because you're coming from a mainstream Christian view, when we could show you through the Bible, through the scriptures, that it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. They had an agenda and they distorted it, and they made this their own money-making system. That's what it comes down to. They made it a money-making system, Christianity. When
Right.
true Christianity, we were supposed to understand the truth about Jesus returning, this God being the devil, and on top of that, there's a spiritual interpretation of the scriptures, and we become the light of the world through the love that we share. It's all control, like Melanie said, a system of control. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, but this goes into every aspect of it all, Josh. When you look at the truth, all right, like I was saying, we look at the entity of how we view Yahweh as Satan, or as at least the enemy of the one true God. Uh, as we know, Satan is used multiple ways in the Bible to express any adversary coming against Israel, and in the New Testament, any adversary coming against the Christ and the Christian church. excuse,
Yeah,
excuse me. But
yeah,
so we find ourselves in this point where we have to really step back and look at it and say, okay, so what we're really viewing is a jealous son who attempted to usurp the throne of his father by making himself the god of this world. He
hmm,
achieved this goal because to most people, if you ask them who God is, the explanation is going to be the Abrahamic God, the God of the Jews. This is going to be the expressed opinion of the majority of the societal world, those believing or non-believing. If you're asking them to express who God is or who they know of as God, because this is the most common understood explanation of God in the world.
right, right, absolutely.
So, so you come into an aspect where you have this idea of God and the devil, and or who Yahweh is and who the Father is, and you get these areas where some people will say, well, it falls into a gray area. Not really, because Christ comes in and he clearly says no to this and no to that. He's clearly going against the laws of Moses. He says you can only have one wife. Uh, turn the other cheek. Bless those who curse you. He transforms the message. He reverses the aspect of the message. It's the same thing that we see John doing in the book of Revelation with the imagery. Because then we have Christ coming, and this time he's coming not as a purveyor of peace, but as a bringer of war on the back of the horse with his bow drawn. It's the same thing. This is a commonality throughout the Bible. Reverse the premise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is, guys, this is so important because when we look at this, when we bring it all together, we are the light in this world. But as long as you keep on believing in a lie, as long as you keep on being brainwashed by what you've been taught, and I'm not saying by any means follow Chris or I. What I'm saying is go do your frickin' study, all right? Because a lot of you in here don't study, and that's clear, okay? And a lot of you are stuck in this idea of Jesus returning because you don't understand the metaphorical and allegorical language that's being used. Please go read the Old Testament and then line it up with Revelation. And then once you see it, it's going to become crystal clear. And then you're going to say, wow, I can't believe I never saw it before. But it is there, okay? Because we've been taught this certain way. We have been in a lie. We're in a system of lies, a system of control. And through this, the masses are being deceived. People are being deceived. Because what we do is we wake up in our 9 to 5 every single day and we go to work and we don't have time for anything else. Whether it may be on our phones or video games or music or any of these things. And some of them are great, okay? But at the end of the day, if spiritual life matters to you and knowing truth, because I believe we all have a longing for truth, then it's going to be important for you to pick up your Bibles and actually read it. It's going to be important to actually look at these things. And once you do, you're no longer going to be caught under the lie. You're going to come out from underneath it, and your eyes are going to be awakened. Okay? So, it's... Yeah, absolutely, Ashley. The 9 to 5 it's a trap. It's actually a trap by design. They designed it that way because they want to make sure that you have no time to study. They want to make sure that you have no time to look into these things. You know, the pastors, they will tell you, oh, just listen to the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit's going to guide you. Oh, Jesus told me that the rapture is going to take place here May 22nd, 2023. Well, guess what? That day is past. All right? Oh, Jesus told me this. Jesus told me that. Stop listening to your pastor and go in the frickin' book and read it yourself, okay? Because the only one that is responsible for your soul salvation is yourself, okay? That's all there is to it. Stop depending on other people. Stop. It's fine to look at other people's videos, but don't use it as concrete evidence. Go look at it yourself. Go bring it to the forefront yourself. And go check and see that we're not lying to you, because we're not. And if we were lying to you, we'd be telling you that the rapture is going to ready to take place. We'd be telling you that Jesus is coming here very soon. Get ready. 1948 Israel, that's a reestablished state of Israel right there, brother, fulfilling Romans 9 to 11. So, study. That's all I can say.
But yeah, we've got to quit. We've got to quit listening to pastors tell you what's in the Bible. That's a fact. If you listen to what pastors tell you, they're coming from what they've been taught at seminary schools, and seminary schools are lacking. They're definitely lacking in what they teach. So,
Yeah, absolutely. It's freaking crazy. It blows my mind the way some things are, because I just, guys, what we're doing is we're going based off of following someone, okay? We're not being leaders. We're following someone. That's what we're doing. We're just following. We're like, you have no intention to really learn the truth when you just want to follow. Okay? Go against the waves. Go against the current. Who cares if you're going to get beat down because of it? Are you scared? I mean, because that's clearly the way of Jesus. That's clearly the way Jesus walked. And it clearly tells you in the Bible that if they hated me, they're going to hate you as well. Well, guess what? People that say Jesus Christ returned in 70 AD, you're going to be smacked down. Let's put it that
Well,
way.
Josh, I gotta say, you made a pretty big leap jumping out into all of this. I mean, come on, you were well on your way to being one of the biggest Christian TikTok creators on here, and that's not a lie.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not a lie.
Yeah.
You were definitely on your way there. No doubt about it. You had tons of viewers, tons of likes, tons of everything on every video. So you're proof that taking this leap is going to cause collateral damage in that aspect of things.
Yeah.
But that's because the truth always comes with collateral damage.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I remember it was like you said, Chris, you told me this. You said just one day I came on and I talked about Yahweh and I even talked about Jesus being Satan, and my views shut right down. I went from like 10 to 20% of people liking me to maybe about 3%. And I'm fine with that. I can care less. Because the only thing that matters is the day I stand before my creator. Okay? I may have things wrong in my life. I may do stupid things as it is. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be honest with you about the Bible. I'm not going to lie to you. Okay? And my walk is my walk. But what I tell you and what I try to get out there to you, I'm not going to lie to you. And I'm always going to tell you to go study it yourself. Okay? We aren't in this for the views. We're in this. This isn't about quantity. This is about quality. Okay? Who cares about 300,000 followers? There's a guy on here I debated a couple of years ago about preterism, and he's all about a wheel within a wheel and everything. I'm not going to mention his name, but he's up to 400,000 followers now because of the BS that he brings forward. And I'm as much as he says he does, then he would have came to this conclusion a couple of years ago. Okay? So, at the end of the day, you guys, we have to tell it like the way it is. It doesn't matter if you're going to get persecuted. It doesn't matter if you're going to get walked over. Who cares? If you want the truth, if you want to tell the truth, prepare to get beat down. That's all there is to it.
Right. And what's funny, Josh, is they'll come into somebody like mine comment section and say I'm doing it just for the likes. Do you notice, like, do I get hundreds of likes? Do I get thousands of likes? Of course not.
No.
I'm not doing it for the likes. If I was doing it for the likes, I'd send the same fluffy, buffy, bunny message that your preacher is sending you, or I'd go out here and pretend to be a prophet, or I'd go out here and I'd pretend to have revelation down to a hatch and know everything about the who's who and what's what in this futurist viewpoint. But I didn't, because I'm not on the side of what's popular. I'm on the side of what's right. And what's right is it's all fulfilled. It's done. It's been completed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's supposed to be on the side of what's right, you guys. It's not supposed to be of the lie. Who cares? All right? Because as we keep on going and the further we push and the further we hold the line and we keep on going with this, you keep on studying and understanding things, I truly believe that people are going to wake up more and more and more. But this is by the design that they have set it up in. This is the trap. This is what we are in because this is the way they design it. Well, guess what? I believe a couple years ago when the pandemic started and the churches were shut down, that was probably the best thing that could have ever happened right there. Because people actually started getting their Bibles. They started reading it. But like you said, Chris, it's also going two different ways. And it going these two different ways, it's you got more and more people coming to the side of basically Jesus is going to return. Then you have other ones saying that Jesus already returned. Okay? And when we bring it all together, when we start to look at it, when we put it all at the forefront, there's going to come a clash. But we know that that's going to happen. But we have nothing to fear. You don't have to fear the things that are going on in this world. You don't have to fear a tribulation. You don't have to fear any of this. The tribulation, the great tribulation, was meant for the old covenant. There is no fear in the perfect love of God. Okay? So
Yeah,
within
the Great Tribulation was most definitely meant for the first century Jewish people and the first century church. The first century church went through the persecution and Gog and Magog and all of the rest of that being the Jewish war. So the imagery is sit there, the history is there. If we quit making it about the past and start focusing on Christianity as having a future, because let's face it, Christianity's taught there's no future.
yeah,
The future's set in stone. This world ends and it's destroyed. That's what Christianity teaches. But your Bible clearly states there's still a future. So
yeah, absolutely. The earth goes on forever and ever and ever, you guys. Think about this, okay? And I was talking to someone about this. I want you to really think about this. John says in Revelation chapter 21 and 22, behold, I, John, saw a new heaven and a new earth, okay? If there's a new earth, and the earth is made up of dust, what is our flesh made up of? It's made up of dust. So if the new earth is made of dust, just like the old one, and we are a flesh or dust, that means the flesh is always here. Okay? That means the earth shall always abide in us as human beings, and the people that come along after us are always going to have this flesh. Because this is where the purifying happens, in other words. Okay? But within that regard, we start to see something and we start to bring it together. So I'm going to allow a guy on here. Hey, what's up, brother?
Howdy, brother.
How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm got a decent car ride ahead of me, so I figured I'd hop on and hop in the conversation.
Yeah, we're talking about some interesting things. Chris and I have been talking for God about an hour and 15 minutes now, Chris. I think it is.
something like that, somewhere in there.
Yeah, we've been talking for a little bit. We're trying to get people to understand about Jesus and how he doesn't want us to live in this idea of fear. He wants us to love one another, and when that happens, there's going to be a rise in the spiritual consciousness. I truly believe that. So it's going to it's going to take a lot for some people, as it is. But when we start to put the scriptures together, I put a video out the other day that the exact same thing that the Pharisees, the religious leaders, were looking for in the days of Jesus is the exact same thing the modern day Christians are looking for as well. So,
Oh yeah, I
Right,
love that
right.
video.
Yeah, a physical kingdom. They're looking for a physical kingdom. Christ clearly said it was a spiritual kingdom. And that's the same mistake that was being made in the past. The church is now just going through the motions of the same process, recreating this for themselves. This
yeah, yeah, it's the kingdom of God is within us, and that's the thing we have to understand. There is a spiritual interpretation to Revelation, and this is esoteric, personal revelation in depth within the understanding of who we are within our spirit man. But as far as the physical coming of Christ, and when Jesus said he was going to return, he told his own disciples that he was going to return in their day, but it was going to be something that all eyes would see, even those who pierced him. So when we look at this and when we bring it all to the forefront, we begin to see that we are not in the old covenant. The old covenant is of judgment, damnation, condemnation, all these things. But the new covenant, which ended at the destruction, the new covenant, which came at the destruction of the temple, which was the end of the old covenant, that was when the true fulfillment started. And that's when everything has come to the forefront in what we live in now, which is perfect love. So, yeah, can you hear me,
Oh yeah,
Tyler? Okay. All
oh
right.
yeah,
You have something
and
to add?
I mean, like other than yeah, like I absolutely agree, and like I kind of had this like epiphany. I kind of also just put out this video the other day because, like, one of the things that I feel is a part of this, like this age, this generation's awakening, like, to distinguish like the physical return is like the Christ consciousness aspect, but like less new agey, like not like more based on the ancient knowledge, the ancient esoteric teachings, so on and so forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like if you understand like parallel timelines, like you can read certain scenarios in the Old Testament that is paralleled almost verbatim perfectly in the New Testament in the life of Jesus. So like then you can even go into 70 AD and the war in the clouds and this phenomena that was seen in the clouds that was written and documented by Josephus. Wasn't much of a mystic, but was a historian who documented this, right?
Yeah.
So like
Yeah. Yep.
so in correlation to that, like I just uploaded a video right whenever this popped up on my FYP about the connection between the mystical alchemical principles of fireworks, the 4th of July, and like founding fathers were all mystics, like that's nothing new here, but like what like shooting off these fireworks, the colors, the minerals, the chemicals that are used to shoot these fireworks into the sky, and then like the apotheosis video that I put out too in correlation with this, showing that there's like a timeline of events and stuff like that, that like what if like the viewing that they saw of like the war in the clouds was attributed to, because each color is attributed to like an archangel. For instance, orange is attributed to Archangel Michael, and then 70 AD was supposed to be like the fulfillment of the returning in the clouds, where Archangel Michael destroys the devil, right? Like
Okay.
as far like in layman's terms. So in a parallel universe where time doesn't necessarily exist, where all spirit exists outside of time and space.
Mm-hmm.
So in a I don't know, a quantum physics level of thinking, like it's just interesting to kind of think about if that has some sort of correlation, because like I know that we're not near 27 right now, right? Or AD. But if you take in the accountability of the change of the calendars and the change of the times and all that stuff, that's also mentioned in Revelation, each generation kind of like goes through this very similar cycle of like in hopes of this return of Christ, which Christ is the spirit. It's the living spirit that exists within all of us
Mm-hmm.
once woken up, once we become awoken to this idea. Like Jesus said, in the flesh, y'all are just like me. You'll go on to do greater things, and so on and so forth. It's like every generation we have made like progress in the intellectual evolution and reaching, because Jesus was an absolute genius in his generation.
Of
He
course.
was teaching and speaking things that no one understood at all,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
was a practitioner of like he was an artificer. And if you look at the mystical and like definition of what an artificer is, it's someone who is literally performing things such as practical or spiritual alchemy. He definitely taught spiritual alchemy, and it's subjective whether he was actually showing, but I mean, turning water into wine, that's literal magic, and that is alchemy. Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just there's some sort of connection here, and I wanted to like it's cool that you brought up Revelate. I was just been thinking about this stuff all day.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted to see if it's like, I don't know, spark something in your head as well.
So it's kind of interesting the way you bring this up. The reason why I say that is because we do see something happen in our day, and it's almost like through the elite's devices, people are waking up to the devices of the elite. They're starting to get in their Bibles more. They're starting to study things more. But I also think it has something to do with the evolution or the alignment of the astrological ages. The reason why I say that is because if we look at when Jesus came, it was during the age of Pisces, okay? But now we're in the age of Aquarius. And it's not so the physical coming of Christ, the coming of Christ that is mentioned in the book of Revelation is the coming of Jesus in the first century church. I mean, you look at the seven churches. There were seven churches in Antioch of Turkey. It's written to them. Kaiser Nero was the Antichrist, 666. You have all these things. The locusts were the Roman armies. Luke 21 says that these are the days of vengeance when all things shall be fulfilled, when the Roman army surrounded Jerusalem. But there is something going on within our day. And I can't quite, it's almost like a spiritual rising in consciousness, I would want to say. That
Exactly.
the kingdom of God being within people, there's like a rising that's happening. But I also believe it's because we're coming out of these lies and we're coming into truth, and our frequencies are rising as well as a higher
Oh yeah,
consciousness. Because Jesus is the
we're
head and
going
we're the body.
from yep, from 440 to 528. 528 is literally like the love frequency, and 440 is a man-made, like, corrupted frequency, and it was that literally goes back to, like, I hate to sound like a conspiracy nut, but it's just fact. It goes back to the Rockefeller standard, when they were like establishing communication, like radio frequencies, by listening to the radio, and then eventually television, and then eventually movies, motion pictures, yeah, like, and especially in music. That's why you see the change from, like, Frank Sinatra, like, back, he'll relax, and women kind of like ooh and ahd over it. But then, like, then right after that you have Elvis Presley, and then there's literal riots. They, like,
Yeah,
there's
that's interesting.
these, yeah, like, the elites understand the power of, like, the, like, frequencies, and how it influences people that are unaware of these external influences. So, like you're saying, I wholeheartedly agree that there's this just force of nature that's just really pushing people into waking up, and people, like, literalism is my biggest, like, pet peeve when it comes to, like, biblical studies.
Well,
uh
I just want to ring in here. When you look at what's going on in this world today, other than those that are waking up, though, it's beneficial to look at the other aspect. Outside of that scope of people that we consider waking up, are all of these people that are still lost and trapped in this same uh, perpetuated intentional cognitive dissonance that is being thrust on them by our government. They're using psychological tactics as a form of mass confusion on a purposeful level. This is to create the chaos we see around us. So as so many come out of the truth, so many still mired in it are causing so much chaos in the process.
Yeah,
oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And see, like, you see all these, like, videos of, like Christian extremists that are dead set on, this is the end of times, this is the end of days. Look at the Euphrates River drying up, and that means we're going to see Leviathan pop out of the sea like a giant octopus and start, wiping. Like, it's like,
Right,
okay, like,
right,
you got to
cracking me up.
understand, God loved us enough to hide the dangerous spirits and make them invisible to where we can't see them, so that way the meek can live in peace and happiness and abundance and not have to see these things, and be able to give them the strength to overcome their influence. It's invisible substance, it's all energy, it's all the same thing, right?
Mhm.
So what we're seeing here is, if you look around, and, like, I'm sure we all have had a lot of friends in the last, I don't know, 6 months, where, like, bad breakups, friends that were, like, couples that were, I don't know, just, like, real bad relationship issues, people coming out as narcissists, really starting to show their true colors. And going back to the persecution, we know that the persecution in the first century was not against traditional modern Christianity whatsoever. It was those people, as the Pharisees in that time period, that was persecuting what we call the Gnostics now, who also call themselves the Christians. So we're seeing this
Yep.
same rise in energy inside of people and their actions, and the demons that are coming to the surface is this invisible energy that's been locked away inside of the Euphrates or whatever, and it's been released, and it's making people into literal, like, demons, and not realizing that all demons is literally the 7 deadly sins. It's people that act out of envy, that
It's their
act out of
flesh.
wrath.
Yeah.
It's all this lower frequency, like external influence that people have not yet been able to discern the good from evil because they lack knowledge and they haven't read and became afraid of Hosea 4:6. So
Right,
we're
right.
seeing this
Yeah.
rise of people that are just stepping into where they think that they're fighting for the Lord, but they're doing it in a form of wrath. They're doing it in a form of envy. They're doing it in a form of gluttony, consumption because of the amount of 440 hertz frequency that they've consumed. They think it's just food. No, you can consume with your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth. Every sense in your body is a consumption. So they're consuming external energy, not realizing that they are working for the enemy,
Well,
which is the
that's
1%.
so this is interesting that you say this because um, reading even Philo of Alexandria, he was talking about in Genesis 1:26 when it says, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." It wasn't talking so much about the body that man had. It was talking about the universal mind that God placed into man. So,
And God molding us with God's fingers in the womb, meaning we were created a specific way with a specific purpose in a like in the womb and since we were infants, but the moment that we were born into this world, we started to adopt this world. And then the world started to mold us into what Christianity wanted us to be, what the elites wanted us to be, what so and so wanted
yeah.
us to be. And then the next thing we know, we're taken away from our true spiritual nature, which is what God created us in the womb, which is our true selves.
So, and I think that this is what it comes from. Remember how when Peter stepped out of the boat and as he kept his eyes on Jesus, nothing happened to him, but as soon as he took them off, he fell. I believe this is what has happened with Christianity. That Jesus is the Word. Okay, he is the Word. He's even the Rhema. He's the Bible. And when you study the Bible and you understand it, you cannot be shaken no matter how much of the storms come. But the way the elite or the people or whatever has groomed us, society to be, we have been placed into this other understanding where they want us to pursue this instead of step out of alignment with them and go against the
Josh,
current or the waves.
Josh, look at this
Yeah.
aspect of it though. The moment we politicized Christianity, the moment the Catholic Church took Christianity in any political direction whatsoever, they took their eyes off of Christ. That's an immediate, because now
Right.
they're directing everything directly
Right.
at the affairs of man. So the
Yep.
moment they
Powerful.
decided
Yeah.
to take this in a political manner whatsoever, they took their eyes off of Christ. So
Oh wow.
Right.
Oh
And then
wow.
to even add to the word, John 1:1, in the beginning was the word was with God, the word was God. So just to tie this all together, what is a word in general? It's words that we produce from our mouths, which are sounds, which is frequencies and vibrations. Therefore, in reference to the very first utter of sounds, frequencies, and vibrations coming from the Word, who is Christ, who spoke everything into existence, and this is where the aspect of the esoteric uh, nature of the word abracadabra comes from. Abracadabra is an ancient word that was reduced in modernity to just be a stereotype for magicians. But this is anciently, like what abracadabra means is essentially I speak things.
Hmm. The tongue can give life and it can give death. Yeah. What were you saying? Oh boy. Okay.
Bubby down here, this doctrine
Sorry,
is heresy.
my apologies. I had a
Well,
phone
what if
call.
I told you, Bubby, that it's total heresy, that it's blasphemy against God? What would you say then? I mean, would you have the same feelings of animosity that you drum up in other people by doing that to them? I mean, of course you would, because you don't like being told you're a false teacher and or perpetuating a false doctrine either. I'm just addressing this on the fact that you don't you feel that you have a right that you don't have to just come into somebody else's life and proceed to tell them that they're heretics and they teach a false doctrine and that they teach lies. And though it's an open forum, some opinions are rendered best kept to oneself.
Yeah, right. Especially
Also,
ones that go ahead and talk, Tyler.
sorry, I keep getting the phone calls.
Yeah, no worries, man. You're good. Yeah, no. This is good because, guys, this is the spiritual interpretation.
I'm a self-proclaimed heretic because
Of course you are, man.
sorry.
We're all heretics, man. We're all heretics in the eyes of modern mainstream Christianity. That's just the truth. Okay. It's all right, Missy. Hope you're well. If you want to jump in the box, you're more than welcome to. Proud heretic here. Absolutely, Melanie. I'm thinking about creating a private platform called Brotherhood of Heretics or something. Seriously. Yeah, I don't know what happened. So, yeah, so Chris, I think that's here. I think that's
Yeah.
ultimately what it comes down to at the end of the day. That Jesus did exactly what he said he was going to do. He gave it all to us. We have all power and authority here on earth because it never left, and it's just a matter of waking up to it, in other words, and coming into alignment with the truth and other people as well. And through that, we will have love in this world. The elite will lose their power. I believe the 1% will lose their power, all the wealth that they have. We can disperse that, give that to the poor. Next thing you know,
Well,
boom, bada bing. I think a lot of things could happen.
it'll break the delusion of power. The delusion of power is what it is. There's a delusion that the 1% holds this power. I mean, the majority outnumbered them. We outnumber the elite. This is just a fact. They hold no true power. Their power stems from the fact that we give it to them by treating them as if they deserve some higher respect than they do.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Just
And this is why the 1% stays the 1% because they are dark or considered black magicians, right?
mhm.
They understand how all of this stuff works and what is power. Knowledge is the truest form of power because they think that they have the knowledge of God and that they are the gods of this world. That's what they truly believe. And the reason being is because the fact that they are the 1% always has been. Well, the number 1 goes back to the letter Aleph, which Aleph literally means ox or goat or and so
Wow.
they're not rich. They don't have checking and savings accounts. They don't have cash in their pockets. They're billionaires for a reason, and that's because they, not all of them, but a very, very big amount of them have absolutely done things to get to the, like Bill Gates, perfect example, has done awful things, crimes to humanity, in order to elevate himself to such a status, and he is part of that 1%. He's just a lot of background. We don't know their names. Can't combat their magic.
Yeah. That's you see, and that's honestly what it comes down to. It comes down. You see, what we're doing is we're giving power away to these people. We're giving them all. Christianity is constructed in such a way that it works for them. In other words, it works for their well doing. The seminaries are built off of their established works. I mean, even modern Tyler. I hate to say this, man, but even like guys like Michael from Inspiring Philosophy, there's no point in coming against these guys because there's no way they're going to see it because what they're going to use is brainwashed arguments that their seminary schools already taught them or whatever the case may be. And that's the problem here with this because it's almost like it's like a battle of orthodoxy which versus Gnosticism, in other words. And orthodoxy actually
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
there's no point in it, man. So
Well,
thanks.
Yeah,
see,
let's
that's
keep
the
our
thing
optimism.
with the scholars. The scholars are just they. Okay, you think about Simon the Magus, who got his way into into the apostate, or to into the to become an apostle, basically. Like he thought that he could purchase his. That's for one what the elites are doing. But then you have these scholars who hide behind a piece of paper, who think that this knowledge that they obtained, that they paid for, is superior when there is access literally to God's knowledge. It's not saying that you become God and have all knowledge of the universe, but you can literally, like the Bible literally teaches this and says, ask God and you shall receive it. Jesus says, ask the Father in my name and it shall be given to you. Ask me for anything and I will give it to you. But the church teaches yes, no, or maybe. I hate that. I can't stand that because that's not what the Bible says. And then you have the scholars who are basically just doing damage control because they went into an institution that is literally, it's the education system that everyone knows is flawed, and then they declare themselves as superiors over anyone. When you combine scholarship with mysticism, then you can obtain real gnosis, real divine intervention. They study the works of literal mystics. Every book in the Bible was written by a different mystical author with a divine experience, but they're not seeking any type of divine experience. And then they want to demonize mystics and mysticism and Gnosticism as if it's some sort of heresy, when these are the people that gave the Bible and put it into existence. It was just canonized by a group of people.
Yeah, yeah. You see, that's the thing about it. And when you read these letters, they're first century letters, correspondent letters that were written to a first century audience. Doesn't mean we can't use them for spiritual interpretation of our kingdom, which is within us, the kingdom of God, which ultimately people come to this conclusion, this understanding that something's going on here. And I do believe there is a progression within this, within astrotheology and the movement of the stars and astrology, the zodiac table, everything. Because if you look at it, in the age of Gemini, that was in the time of Noah. That's actually when God told Noah to put two of each animal in, okay? Two of each twins. Then you have the times of Abraham, which was more so during the age of Taurus, age of Moses, Aries, age of Jesus, Pisces, which would be the fish. And then finally, in the age in which we are in, is the age of the water bearer, which is the man with the pitcher of water, which I believe that this is when the pouring out happens. In other words, that there's a new revelation of truth that's coming on people because this is the way it happens within the progression or the evolution of mankind. In other words, it's evolution. It has to happen this way. This is how it has to occur. So,
Well, Josh, that's what I'm saying. People don't want to recognize the idea of religious evolution, though. The idea that as we move forward, we evolve intellectually as well as spiritually, and our understanding should evolve and grow as that happens. To most people, that idea is against anything biblical when it's not. You can see a clear progression of understanding and spirituality throughout the Bible.
right, exactly. It's so, I mean, Paul even says the law was a schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ. You see, the people weren't ready for it. This is why they were still in that fleshly mindset, the conquering, the torture, this mentality that, oh, it's all about war, in other words. But then when it came to Jesus, Jesus said, no, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, you have heard what I say unto you. He completely flipped, and they weren't. Just like people are already now, it seems like. Honestly. They're
Well,
still using these two deities.
I have a very, very interesting, almost earth-shattering theory, if correct, but like I kind of can't see it any other way that has to do with Noah's Ark
Mm-hmm.
and the flood in general. Okay, so when you take Noah's name and like in English, but even in the Hebrew, like there is a vav that is used as far as, and that's where we get the sound either like for the W sound or the V sound.
Mm-hmm.
So Noah can technically be transliterated as nova, like a supernova, and then you have an ark, which is like the Ark of the Covenant or the Ark, an ark that is created through a positive and negative electric current. That it creates a literal arc of electricity, which is energy, which is invisible substance, which is the most powerful thing on the planet, would be a supernova. So the flood potentially could be that case, like where there's a supernova of invisible energy that literally just slaps everyone in the face. But 3,500 years ago, when this text was written, was in the understanding of people 3,500 years ago. So the intent behind the authors, our understanding of a modern flood automatically goes straight to water. Well, what does it take for something like an Ark of the Covenant or Noah's Ark to emit this type of energy? You have to have a cell, of which the Baghdad batteries, there's ancient knowledge and technology that has been found, discovered, archived, put in museums that were literally using this type of technology way back in the ancient times. So water, it literally takes water to flood the inside of the ark to create the first form of the Ark of the Covenant that was passed down eventually, that led into Solomon's temple.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Wow.
they could use it to wipe out the evil in the world, because it was basically a giant fucking weapon that if anyone even touched the damn thing, they'd drop dead.
Wow. So, so I do. So this is what's interesting about this, with the understanding of there's an evolution here that's coming. There is definitely things that are here, but as of the text that we have in the Bible, the interpretation of those scriptures is meant for a first century audience, but the spiritual interpretation is meant for us as well. It's not so much as a wheel within a wheel as it is that the power's already here. It's already here, and it's a matter of waking up to it. It's not that it ever left, because we already have access to it. Jesus said that I give you the keys to the kingdom. Okay? And if there's it, he'd be really ticked off if he came back and his kingdom wasn't the way it is, honestly. But we are the light of
Oh,
the
by the
world.
way, what are music notes?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Music notes are sounds, frequencies, vibrations, and then those
absolutely,
notes form keys.
absolutely, absolutely. It's all music, and this is kind of funny because think about this. In the Old Testament, it was the law, the prophets. They always get the law of the prophets, but they forget the songs. Okay, think about this though. When Jesus was up on the Mount of Transfiguration with Moses and Elijah, they would could Jesus have been a representation of the Psalms, the songs, the joy? In other words, he was the third part, because even in that, that's when the Melchizedek order is talked about, and he actually talks about the book of Psalms. He actually takes more Psalms in his writings than anything. I believe it was, I heard before. So the frequencies, the joy, the song, the
Well,
worship.
that's like I was telling you, Josh. What I have learned of the Melchizedekian order, they built their city in a way that it resonated when they sang and they praised in song, and they did it 3 times a day, in the morning, the afternoon, and at night.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, dude,
Wow.
speaking of Melchizedek, look, okay, so this again, just it's crazy we're having this conversation. God is great. Okay, so Melchizedek,
Well,
This is the real secret of Melchizedek, and there's no changing it. There's no way I could have manipulated this. So Melchi, for one, that goes into Milky Way. It's where we get the word Milky Way from. But
Mm.
Melchi, which again the word key. So we have Mel, and then we have key. Mel
Key of
goes
frequency.
back to the ancient Canaanite deity that was basically the Adam figure, the male counterpart to his consort, and from the Canaanite pantheon. And then you have key, as in like keys to the heavens, keys to, the universe, and so on and
Notes,
so. And then
musical notes, keys to frequency. Yeah.
check this out, just to drive it home. There's so many different weird interpretations for Zedek, but Zedek, the final three letters, Zadi, Dalet, Kaf, literally is the Hebrew word for the planet Jupiter.
Oh, really? Wow.
All have their own frequency and energy that they give off. That's where the influence from these giant energetic balls or spheres, like it's where it comes from, and these are where the external influence on us comes from. So it's like it's absolutely mind blowing when you start to really tie all these things together, and it gives people think that this is heresy, right?
Yeah, of
Who
course.
cares? Because it gives more validation that people 3,500 to 2,000 years ago were writing about things that science is just now claiming to discover. It gives more
Wow.
validity and
Wow.
truth to Jesus's words. It gives more validity and truth to the Bible. It gives validity and truth, and that is the spirit of truth that is starting to hit everybody, is realizing that spiritual science was the original science.
Wow. Wow. That's good. That's really
Well,
good.
I would have to
hello, you
agree
all
with that.
heretics.
Huh? Say
Hello,
again?
you all heretics. How you doing?
Us heretics are doing well tonight. Absolutely. We're sitting
Yeah,
here
we
writing down.
are, aren't we? I was going to. You made a remark earlier about the fact that people are studying today and they're discovering things. And I kind of want to give you an analogy that this is not probably the first time it happened in history. Because if you remember back in the 1600s, I think, or 1500s, when Gutenberg invented the printing press,
Mm-hmm.
people started to have access to information, to the Bibles. They started reading it, they started analyzing it, and that's when Luther came about, that's when Calvin came about. That's how all the Protestant movements came out of Catholicism. You had kind of a revival of, hey, salvation is by grace, it's not by
Mm-hmm.
and so I think the same thing happens today or nowadays with the discovering of the internet, when people have access to all kinds of information. I mean, you go on the internet, you get all kind of interlinears, you get translations, you get different languages, you can search historical documents, you have all that, and now people again are able to understand and kind of analyze it for themselves in a better way, obviously, than 1600s, but it's the same kind of thing. What do we learn from this, though? Well, after the revival, we did have a bunch of Protestant denominations, but Catholicism and Orthodoxism remained, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say I'm not the prophet here, but I kind of, if I would use the pattern, I would say that the mainstream futurism will probably remain for quite a long while, but then we will have this kind of revival or many people that are thinking for themselves, that are studying for themselves, they will kind of eventually see the truth. Now, the ugly part of this is that there were probably, and we already see this in preterism, even in this infant state, there will be a lot of flavors, right? I mean, even today you have I.O., you have Rapture, like Ed Stevens. You have there's another guy on the internet that says that Christianity ended in 70 AD. You
Oh, yeah.
have
Yeah.
the conservative preterists, right? Like the Churches of Christ, or you're going to have all kinds of flavors. I mean, the fact that you're preterist it doesn't mean that all of a sudden we all agree and hug each other and sing kumbaya. But ultimately, we're going to be much closer to this ultimate truth than preterism is today.
Yeah. You see, it's Tyler. What I would say, the take I take on it is this: is that preterism is true in the physical regards, but there's a spiritual interpretation of the scriptures because Jesus' kingdom is forever. I don't believe Christianity was cut off in 70 AD. Absolutely not. And that's one thing that they're trying to use to say, oh, Christianity ended. Because they're saying that the door shut based on Matthew 25 with the parable of the 10 virgins. But like Chris told me, he actually said that was for the judgment of Israel. Christianity goes on forever. It's the new covenant. The new covenant goes on forever. In Jesus, if Jesus saw where Christianity was today, he'd be highly disappointed because everyone's trying to think what physical means. They're not thinking in the aspect of spiritualism with frequencies, dimensions, other alternate. Just we're not thinking in these regards, and it's sad. It really is because it goes
Right,
way
because
beyond this.
you're dealing with a spiritual kingdom. It says Christ's kingdom is eternal. If Christ's kingdom is eternal, then it doesn't end. It goes on forever. It's what we've chosen to do with that kingdom that is the problem. We
Yeah.
instead of doing what he would have, I guarantee you, when he looks at the church, he would have rather us built charities instead of churches. He'd have rather us built soup kitchens instead of fellowship halls. There's a whole lot more to what Christ would have expected out of the church than what it accomplished.
Yeah. Sad.
Yeah, and
Amen.
if you ever want to address that argument from IOs that they said that the door was shut,
Hmm.
go to Isaiah 26 verses 20,
Yep.
where it
Yep.
says that, come my people, come into your room and
In the inner
lock the
chambers.
door after
Yep.
you and hide for a few.
Chin. And that overpass. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
The door never remained shut. It was just for a few moments.
Yes, absolutely.
That's why you have the open gates of New Jerusalem. But yeah, just in case you ever run into them, I happen to deal with them quite a bit. So
Yeah, those are the Israel only crowd, I think it is.
yeah.
Yeah. Tyler, were you going to say something? Or Patrina or Missy, did you guys want to say something? Anyone want to say anything?
I was just waiting and being patient.
Well, thank you for your patience. It's always, that's a fruit of the spirit right there. You know that, right?
Yeah.
You would know that better than anyone.
Speaking of fruit of the spirit, when I was a Christian and they used to, tell me about the fruits of the spirit, they always made it like it was a fleshly act.
Mm-hmm.
But as I studied it, I realized it's actually the heart of a person.
Yeah. Spirit.
Those
Absolutely.
that aren't those that aren't showing their fruit, it's because their heart isn't right.
Absolutely. It's not what's on the outside that defiles someone, it's what's on the inside.
Right.
So yeah.
And that's why I always knew, the 30 years that I tried to be this perfect person to please God, I would get up every day. God, what do I have to do to please you? What do I have to do to please you? And I always knew that it was my heart that he was after.
Yeah. Always your heart. It We've gotten it so wrong, Katrina, and it's so sad how it is so sad.
Yeah, it's
I love that saying too, just because it's like, again, goes back to that idea I mentioned earlier of like the way that we please God is to go back from whence we came and the way that God molded us inside the womb. That we start to turn our back on God when we stop trying to be our true selves, like who we truly are, who
yes.
we know we are on the inside. Because that's how
Right.
God
Well,
Yes.
that
molded us, and then the world
right.
molded
Well,
us
that
into a
also
different
falls
way.
back to the idea of being born again, wouldn't you say? Where you've got to go back. It's a renewing of the mind. This idea of being born again in the spiritual aspect of it. To go back and see things the way you did when you were younger, without prejudice, without anger, without animosity, without hatred, without envy, without greed. The way a child sees the world. And I mean, yeah, it's hard to do, but at the same time, that is really the perspective I think we're supposed to take in that aspect.
Yeah.
Amen.
And what futurism does, actually, they kind of shut down all this because they are waiting for this utopian world to come, and they don't realize that all these are here now, and so they don't make any effort or any
Yes.
not even thinking about
Yep.
enjoying them and professing them or practicing them today. They're still waiting. Oh, there's going to be a day when everything's going to be settled. No, there won't.
Yes, I made a TikTok on that, and I said how I sit and I watch my father. He was an alcoholic for 40 years. And after I accepted Christ when I was 20 years old, he saw a big change in me. And so that made him want what I had. And I was so excited when he got it. And now I look at it, he's such a lonely man, but he sits on his back porch every day, wasting his life away, waiting for this rapture to take place or for Jesus to come. And instead of enjoying the family he has in front of him, that's all he's focused on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's because they go to Titus 2:13 looking for that blessed hope and the glorious appearing of the great God.
Yeah.
So, but the truth is this, we have all of it right now. We have it all with us right now.
Yes. Yes.
And it's not that it's coming, it's already here. And it's a matter of it coming to reality. I truly believe that. And that we stop allowing these elites and higher power control everything because it's the 1% of the world that controls a lot of the wealth. And if that was dispersed among everyone, no one would be poor in this world.
Yeah.
And everyone would actually have a state of well being, a state of peace. And we could all love God.
Yeah. Nobody even cares about the planet right now because they're like, why care? It's going to be destroyed anyway.
Right, that's the whole thing. It's going to hell in a handbasket. Well, that's okay. It's supposed to go to hell in a handbasket. So
Right.
why should we do
That's
anything to stop it?
Right.
that just means we're
Yep.
getting
It's
closer and
conditioning.
closer to the
Yeah.
rapture.
Yep. It's conditioning, like Tyler just said. It's all conditioning. And it's sad, man. It really is.
It's conditioning and subjectivity to the physical church. Even the church was spiritual. The congregation is the kingdom of heaven within you. It congregates within you. It's a gathering within you. It's literally all the angels. As described. Like some people call them angels. Some people call them, like blessed gods or it's all energy. It's all within you. That's
You
like
know you know what that sounds like to me?
there's no.
You know what that sounds like to me?
Go ahead.
It sounds like the Melchizedek order right there. That's what it sounds like.
Amen.
The songs, the
Amen.
worship, the joy.
Right.
I've been doing some
Waking up
research.
and realizing we are the sons of God, and by sons, this is not. This is a complete because it has the same exact phonetic as sons, as in stars.
I've been
We are the children of God.
I've
Yeah.
been doing some research on grounding. I don't know if any of you guys know what that is.
Is that
Modern
going
Mystic, you might
outside?
know.
Yeah, is that going outside, having your bare feet touch the ground?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, that we were created from this earth. And
Mhm.
because we walk around with soles on our feet 24/7 and we never get the ground to touch our dirt, the bottoms of our feet.
Mhm.
That's why there's so many people sick. There's actually healing in your body if you walk outside on the ground barefoot, lay in the sand or whatever, let the earth touch your body. There's healing natures in that.
That's so cool. That's so freaking cool. That's amazing. It just it all the tools are here. We have access to everything.
Right?
Even sun gazing even helps you. And
Yeah.
I've done some studies on that and how even the Egyptians, they actually used to do sun gazing.
Uh-huh.
Cleopatra, Nefertiti, different ones, and the reason for it is because you're absorbing what they knew was the energy of God, because they believed that God was consciousness. They
Uh-huh.
didn't, and what happened was Christ, he became the consciousness embodied within a man. He was that pure light, and he came to show us the ways of the true God, the true deity, to get away from Yahweh, because there were blessings and curses in Yahweh, but in him,
Right.
no one gets cursed. The rain falls upon the
Right.
just as well as the unjust. God is completely good, and he loves
Right.
us, and he wants the best for
That's true.
us. So,
That is true. Yeah, it's proven fact, the vitamin D that's in the sun.
Yeah.
yeah,
These
Yeah,
all
and
these natural elements actually heal us, but the elite is doing everything they can to keep us away from these elements.
yeah, yeah.
So we're
yeah, that's
sick all
exactly
the
what I was going to
time.
say. Yep.
Bless you, Tyler. By the way, modern mystic, you guys. He just had to drop out and everything, but he knows his stuff. Tyler knows his stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah, he's really good and everything. He gets a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
hate.
his line of understanding goes along the lines of a lot of mysticism, ancient Gnostic teachings, and things like that. But he knows what he's talking about when it comes to what he studies and what his perspective on it is. The man knows what he's saying, so I got to give him that.
Yeah, yeah, he does. You guys should give him a follow. Give Chris a follow if you guys aren't following Chris. The thing about it is that when we look at this, we have everything at access now. The frequencies, the vibrations, the worship, all these things, they're all a part of the kingdom of Christ, because it's a kingdom of inner healing. And when we're eating foods like GMOs and different things, genetically modified stuff, this is, and I'm to blame for this too. I don't want to be a hypocrite about it, but basically the thing is, this is what's causing diseases. This is what we're doing it to ourselves. And
Yes.
we're being told that, oh, Jesus is the solution. Wait till he comes. He's going to overthrow the Roman Empire. He's going to overthrow this. We're going to live in Jerusalem for 1,000 years. Guys, that sounds exactly like the way they thought about things back in the Pharisees' day. All we are is the modern day Pharisees. We have access to it right now. We have the solutions right now. We need to get our asses in gear and put it in the motion of things. Okay?
Yep. Every Christian today denies that Jesus did what he said he was going to do and what he came to do by
Right,
saying he's coming back tomorrow.
modern
Yep.
Christianity has turned Christ into a false prophet, and they
Yep.
don't even see that that's what they have done. That they have made
Nope.
him a false prophet.
Yeah.
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 and and
But
and that's because they're like the Jews of old. They're like those of the first century, waiting on that physical kingdom to come.
Yeah. Absolutely. Missy, do you want to say anything? I know you have your little ones, but it's up to you. Um, that's fine if you don't. But anyways, yeah, it's
When
you
I
know,
first met Chris, I came on TikTok because of my daughter-in-law. She got me on it. And
mhm,
I was just coming on to watch it, and I noticed all the religious Christianity that was coming across my feed. So I
mhm,
started doing just funny TikToks with my dog and stuff like that. Then I did my first Christianity TikTok, and it became huge. It got like 48,000 views. And I was like, wow, maybe
wow,
that's what's, real popular on this app is Christianity. So I started doing stuff about Christianity. So Chris come on one of my videos I did, and he commented and he told me about God. And I was like, what? You're crazy. Get out of here, you idiot.
yeah,
But what he doesn't know is that comment that he left on my video, he told me to go search out Melchizedek, I think it was.
Yeah, yeah,
Is that right, Chris? Is that what you told
yeah,
me? And
Yeah.
what you don't know is even though I told you was an idiot and get out of here, I actually did go research it.
And now
Yeah.
you
Well,
see it more. Your eyes are open.
Katrina, I know we in the beginning, me and you kind of knocked heads a little bit, but
Yeah,
and I know that a lot of people sometimes they take me as being angry. They don't get that I take this stuff actually fairly seriously. So I come
yes.
across sometimes harsher than I intend. So
No, I get it that you're passionate. That's one thing I learned. You're very passionate, and a lot of the anger that you show is because people are attacking you so much. So I understand it now, but in the beginning I thought you're just a hateful man.
Yeah, he really
But
knows
but
his stuff.
he's one of the first ones that planted a seed towards preterism with me.
Wow, wow, that's awesome. He, it's funny because like when he commented on my videos and he came across as a Gnostic preterist, that actually gave me encouragement right there because I was sitting there when I had a couple of videos I came out with, oh my God, I don't know if there's many people out there like this. And there aren't, but
Yeah.
somehow the Lord brought them into contact. And it's amazing because more and more people are waking up to it. Of course, like you said, Chris, there's going to be people that go one way and then there's going to be others that go the other. But
So this is a sign for Chris that he needs to know what he's doing is actually working.
yeah.
well, I'm glad to hear that it's actually making an impact somewhere. So thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Now, yeah, if you guys aren't already doing it, follow Chris. Okay, Reconstructing Christianity. I'm gonna be getting off here shortly, you guys. Chris and I. Well, we've been on here since about 8 or so, and everything. And I gotta go. Well, it's 10:11 right now. I gotta go take care of a couple of things before bed.
Yeah, time can fly by when you're on this app talking
All right.
about this stuff. That's one thing I've
Yeah.
Well,
learned.
Yeah,
thank you for having me
Well,
on,
thank you
Josh.
for
I
having
got some
me.
stuff to do too. So
yeah,
y'all
Thank
have
you
a
for
good
having
evening.
me, and it's a good heretical time.
yeah, definitely. It's good to get our
Bless you
views out
guys.
there.
And
Bless
remember,
you.
when you create a video, make sure you put a hashtag preterism is the future on it so we can start getting this hashtag going around.
That's a smart idea. I'll start doing that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All
Preterism is
right,
the
bye,
future.
guys.
See you
All right.
soon. Bye.
Bless you, Katrina. Good talking. Robbie, good talking, man. Missy, it's always a pleasure. Hope all is well. And you are most welcome to come in the box. You can come in the box anytime you'd like. I know you couldn't really talk because of everything, but needless to say, you're more than welcome. So, all right. You have yourself a good night, you guys. As it is, I'm going to go ahead and jump off here. Have a good night, Missy. All right, guys. Yeah, it was that was actually a really good live, as it was. I'm not going to jump too much into anything else. It's about 2 hours long, a little bit longer than that. I think this was a really good live, a really good informative thing. Um, eh, Beloved, God, man, just please do your research on the Euphrates River. Okay, please do your research on these things. Okay, because the talk about the Euphrates River actually comes into Isaiah chapter 27 as well. We'll probably do a live here in a couple of days or something like that. We'll go ahead and figure it out. But I'm going to go ahead and jump off of here, you guys. Bless you, Stephanie. Beloved, just keep on studying, man. Bless you, Ashley. You guys have yourself a good night, and I will, Kathy, bless you. Lenny, I sure will. Missy, always a pleasure. All right, well, guys, I'm going to jump up off here. My dad actually just decided to jump online too. So, all right, bless you guys. I love you. Have yourself a good night. And I will be actually uploading this on YouTube. If you guys missed it, I will be uploading this on YouTube. What's today? Sunday? My God, the days go by. Sunday. Yeah. I'll be uploading this probably tomorrow, as it is. All right? All right. You guys have yourself a good night. And I'll talk to you guys here soon. Okay? Yeah, that's my pops. All right, guys. Have a good night. Blessings. Next live will probably be here in the next couple of days. I'll be jumping on here with a couple of people, I'm sure. All right, guys. Have a good night.